if I could give any advice to anybody out there, it would be make sure you check in with your local shops and guides. If you can book a trip and it's down the road, if you can make sure you buy some stuff online, it's letting these folks know that you are thinking about them. That's a big deal too.
That was Matt Smythe providing a great tip to think about this week. COVID-19 and fly fishing today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show today. Have you ever thought about starting a new podcast? I've got one of the biggest internet marketers on the new podcast this week at outdoorsonline.co. That's outdoors with an S. It would be amazing if you could click over and subscribe on Apple Podcasts to show your support for the show today. Matt Smythe, who runs the communications arm for AFFTA, is on to share some tips on dealing with COVID-19 if you have a fly fishing business.
A quick word from our sponsor. GotFishing.com is your trusted source of information with access to the world's best fishing trips. You'll never pay a dime extra for the trip you book, and in many cases, less than advertised. Find out where Got Fishing could take you by heading over to GotFishing.com today. That's GOTFishing.com, or reach them by phone at 208-630-3373. GotFishing.com, the easiest place to start your next fishing adventure.
Let's hear from Matt Smythe from AFFTA.org. How's it going, Matt?
Not too bad. Good morning.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on here. We're still hanging in there. I'm not sure. This will probably air in a couple months, and so hopefully we'll be pulling out of this COVID thing. But I wanted to dig into some of that. COVID, how we might help some of those fly fishing companies and people out there. But before we jump into that, can you just talk about how you first got into fly fishing and then how you brought it into AFFTA?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in upstate New York, and I grew up more on the conventional side as far as fishing is concerned, and hunting and stuff like that. So a lot of time spent outdoors. After I got done with the service and I went back to college, I wound up going to grad school at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And I took an LL Bean outdoor discovery school. I went to an outdoor discovery school for fly fishing. And actually, Tom Sadler was he was the one who taught my dad and I how to cast a fly rod.
Wow.
And Jeff Kelby.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a bit of a small world, because when the position for communications director opened up at AFFTA, I had seen it, and I've been a freelance writer for since 2011, freelance advertising, marketing, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw this position come up, I got in touch with Tom, who was on the board at the time, and he told me definitely throw my hat in the ring. So, so yeah, it's these small world, tight community moments that
that's cool.
That's what fly fishing seems to be about,
Exactly. And yeah, and Tom Sadler, I had him on. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And we talked a little bit about AFFTA, more, he described IFTD, and we'll dig in. The interesting thing is, I think since that show, I've probably said IFTD so many times, people might be getting tired, because it was a great, it was back in, in Colorado this year. And yeah, it was a really good show. I think you guys did a good job putting that on.
Yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
Yeah. So what is a communications director? Can you describe maybe a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I'm at the helm of all member communications. So anytime that we've got, there's news that we have, whether it's PR about efforts that we've got on Capitol Hill, fighting for policy and what have you, whether it's conservation or tax and trade, different things like that.
Right.
We keep our members informed on that. We try to highlight as many members as we can, member businesses, guides, retailers, manufacturers, different things. Folks that are doing great things for the industry, and then likewise for for conservation as well, for our resources. Um, a lot of it is just it's keeping our membership apprised of what's going on and
Mm-hmm.
how they can get involved, and the work that we're doing, the value that we're trying to add, that we are adding um, to keep their livelihoods going
Yeah.
strong and grow the sport. So
Exactly. And especially times now with this COVID thing going on. I mean, this is nobody's ever seen this before, and it's affecting businesses big time. We're hoping we're going to bounce back out of it, but maybe you could talk about that. What is AFFTA doing, or what's your plans to help some of those fly fishing companies get through this thing?
sure, I think our biggest thing right now, the tough part is that everybody is, all of our members are, it's small businesses, right? Like 90% are small businesses, whether it's the retailers, the Main Street mom and pop shops, or individual guides, even manufacturers. We've got a lot of manufacturers that are considered small business,
Yeah.
small to medium size. And everybody is, we're all working to get a piece of that, that stimulus pie,
Oh,
right?
right.
Trying to get a hold of something that will help bridge the gap between now and when hopefully things start to ease up and people are able to get back outside and start to get back to a little bit of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's trying to keep our members up to date and apprised of the things that are going on. We don't necessarily have like direct solutions, but what we're trying to do is to point people in the
Yeah.
right direction for resources as much as possible. Number one. Number two, we're trying to be as strong an advocate on the Hill and in each of the state houses as possible for our businesses. Where we reached out at the very beginning before, it was just before the first stimulus
Mm-hmm.
came out, and we had asked for some very specific things to help our industry, and there was three things in particular, and all of them wound up being heard and included, which for us it's like that for us is a huge win, and that's a huge part of our value for our membership, is that we do have the voice of the industry, where it is being heard.
Yeah.
And folks realize the value that our industry brings to the economy. I mean, the fly fishing industry contributes just over $1 billion to the economy, $1 billion to the economy. So it's not, it's nothing to sneeze at by
No.
any means. But we're reaching out, to governors, trying to get our small businesses to be considered essential businesses, or at least allow them to, like fly shops, to do curbside pickup or different things along that line. We're trying to offer some advice and a little bit of guidance on how to, for instance, how guides can safely start returning to taking people out on trips.
Right.
The things to consider when it comes to social distancing and minimizing the risk of potentially passing on the virus. Just trying to give some very frank advice to folks.
So yeah, I mean, you just said a huge thing there, right? The guides. I mean, talk about a challenge. It's one thing if you're doing online stuff, but we've got guides that are taking people out. You got fly shops, and I know people right now are starting. I mean, there's some states that are starting to bring it back in, and some that aren't. I mean, some, I think fishing still is closed, but so what would you tell somebody who's a guide right now? I mean, do they just listen to their governor, their state legislators? Where do they go?
The biggest thing, as far as advice that we're giving now, or that we're asking, we're trying to impart with guides, is to to make sure you're staying in line with the guidelines that your state has outlined. Right. I mean, if they're allowing people to start to get back to work, but they say you've got to you've got to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. Make sure you're very aware of what that is. And I mean, you got to think about a lot of things that, I mean, that even the states aren't necessarily like privy to, or that they aren't, maybe they don't spell out. But I mean, with guides, you've got, I mean, first and foremost, if you're in a drift boat, there's most definitely not 6 feet between you
No.
and, and your client, even if it's just somebody on the bow. But, and then again, you've got like, okay, you have to ride separately, should ride separately to the boat launch.
Right.
The food aspect and who's, handling food, or whether or not there's food on there. The idea of wearing masks, because I mean, whether it's the guide or the client, whoever's upwind is still, you're upwind, and the other guy's downwind.
It's crazy.
So there, I mean, there's just a lot of considerations. How does your boat get, when you shuttle it, how do you make sure that, your truck, when it's shuttled, is clean and you're not passing that way. So yeah, there's so many considerations. And we got a number of guides together to talk about this. And a lot of it, I don't know if you've seen Kirk Deter's latest piece about, he just put out an angling trade.
Oh, no.
It's so that's sort of his article. Is a result of, it was Kyle Schaefer, who's a guide up in Maine. And so Kyle, Lucas Bissett, who's an AFFTA board member, Hogan Brown, who's an AFFTA board member, who's out in California, Ben Bulis, myself. We had and then we also had another gentleman who guides up in Maine. But we all talked about this, and then Kirk got in touch with a gentleman that he knows from the CDC. I think he's retired CDC, but he is on the front lines of this from a medical standpoint. But he's also a fly fisherman, so he was able to give some very, very practical and scientifically based sort of think about this before you go whole hog. Consider all of these aspects, and it's stuff that we don't. We sort of take for granted.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. Are you, so you mentioned Capitol Hill and all that stuff. Are you taking trips to DC? Is that something you're doing pretty on a regular basis?
Ben Bulis, the AFFTA president, him more so than me. He is, he's absolutely, and even now with travel restricted, it's more phone calls and different things like that. And because there's really not many people around on the Hill right now. But yeah, Ben spends a lot of time in meetings and attending different briefings and things like that. He's there firsthand, and I'm not necessarily amazed, but I just have so much respect for the constant vigilance that Ben has, and just how respected he is, and how much he has the ear of folks on the Hill. He's very smart, and he knows the way to go about making sure that we maintain a seat at the table, as opposed to being the one who hollers the loudest. We're the one who is in on more of the conversations and the decision making, as opposed to just, hollering for things to change.
So the AFFTA, you have the board members, you have everything going on. I mean, it seems like that AFFTA is a pretty important part of the fly fishing industry. What would you tell somebody who isn't a part of AFFTA, doesn't pay dues, and talk about, why they might want to join? I mean, obviously it sounds pretty straightforward. Maybe the question would be why isn't everybody part of AFFTA?
Right. And I'm also the head of member relations. So that's a very good question that I would ask is, why aren't you?
Yeah.
So there's the benefits that we are able to offer. Probably the most significant is our discount liability insurance. So guides, retailers, outfitters, lodges, even some small manufacturers, we have liability insurance that is, it's some of the most, it's the cheapest on the market. And so that's a huge deal for our guides who, our dues are only $35 a year. And for $35, you get, you qualify for this liability insurance. So that's a big benefit. And likewise, fly shops will use it and small manufacturers as well. But so that's a big one. Obviously IFTD, and trying to help folks, with the business of doing business, whether it's the idea of preseason orders or getting people together for networking, firsthand contact with folks that you may not normally get a chance to talk to throughout the year. When shops are able to talk to the owners of a lot of these manufacturers, and not to take anything away from reps, but being able to contact manufacturers directly and have those conversations, it's important to connect, and likewise for all those reps to be able to see more people all in one place. Plus all the new products, and we've got educational opportunities for everything from, how to be able to run your business more efficiently, groom leadership, how to set up your show floor, how to, do that kind of stuff better, conservation, how to get more involved in conservation, how even open to buy on and figuring out your how to carry your fly selection, manage your fly selection. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we cover there. So those are kind of most, I suppose, cool. Most obvious. But then again, it's the fact that we are on the Hill as much as we are, trying to affect positive change and to make sure that policy is moved in the right direction for our industry.
What is one example of, well, first, maybe you could take us to the Hill, somebody who's never been to that area, could you walk us, like, what's that like? Is it different than any other city or place?
I went to grad school in Fairfax and I lived inside the Beltway. So I was close to DC and spent a fair amount of time, just going to, whether it was going to dinner or going to museums or, different things like that. But DC it's a busy city, but it's busy in a different way than like New York or LA or Boston. It's busy, like it's a bunch of just very strong-willed, very purpose-driven people. It's like everybody they know exactly where they're going. Like everybody is just
agenda. They've all got an agenda.
Yeah. So DC is very cool from that standpoint with the capital and what have you. The first time that I went was a couple of years ago, this month, as a matter of fact, and we did a hill walk and we had meetings with a number of different congressional offices, and I didn't realize just how accessible our elected officials are, or their chiefs of staff, or other staffers. We, as long as you follow the protocol, you set up meetings ahead of time and you take care of the, there's a few hurdles that you have to clear, but then you're able to walk into, any of the buildings. You're able to go right to the office, you check in, and then you're able to have meetings. You have your everything that you want to talk about, you've got outlined in a short leave behind, and then you're able to actually talk about everything live with them. And they're in like 90% of the cases, the folks are very, they're very receptive. And it's an impressive place. It's most definitely a bit intimidating, but it's also, it's a very, I don't know, it's very accessible. And I think, you're able to kind of settle in and feel like you're actually something. You're part of the democracy.
It sounds amazing. It sounds like a place that everybody should go and spend some time. So it's interesting because you guys are on, the political piece, and it's one of those things where you talk about guides, right? That's one thing you don't talk about, right? Politics and religion with your clients. I mean, how do you guys balance that with the political thing, right? Because I mean, you got this Trump in the White House, right, who's kind of out there, and then you got other people that are more liberal in their views. How do you guys balance that? Because I'm sure you've got people. I know Tom Sadler's more of a Republican, right? So you've got a mix. How do you guys balance that? How do you know what issues to tackle?
Well, I think our guiding principle is there something egregious happening to, say, from an environmental standpoint? Is there something that's happening in the environment that is to the detriment of not only our natural resources, but to our industry by extension, right? We act in the best interest of the industry and the livelihoods of the 1,400 members that we have, and then everyone else who isn't necessarily a member, but we act in the best interest of them. And to that end, it's not a matter of having to pick a political side as much as it is which side of history do we want to come down on, right? We want to fight for our natural resources. We want to fight for their protection, for the restoration, the conservation. We want to make sure that our fish and the places that we find them are kept healthy and for generations to come. So whether that's fighting against Pebble Mine, or it's working very hard to offer policy recommendations to keep the Magnuson-Stevens, that's our federal fisheries, marine fisheries, trying to keep the Magnuson-Stevens Act strong, or if it's the Clean Water Act, any number of things. We're coming down on the side of it's science, yes, and it's also what's in the best interest of our resources and our businesses. And then the same thing for like tax and trade. We came out to try to get this trade war, to get it ended. And where we try to influence as much as we can by sending letters to the Hill and to different folks in the Senate and in the House. We are also, again, we're trying to connect our people with the best resources possible to be able to handle and sort of change their business according to what is happening. So even though we're fighting or we're working to try to minimize change or trying to get, change it or keep it at bay, we still are offering our folks the resources to be able to pivot and act accordingly.
Can you talk about, what you're doing there, and if that's any struggles you have, kind of, how you guys get your word out, kind of more of the social media and all that stuff?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest hurdle is, we're as a society, we are sort of hyper saturated with everything, right? Yep. News, entertainment, everything is important. Everything is fighting for your attention. And it doesn't matter how really important or not.
Right.
Everybody is sort of vying for the same 7 seconds of your attention. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle. Everyone's inundated with emails. Everyone has got chock full feeds on their social media. And so for me, and this is something that I've been trying to work on and streamline. I'm started into my third year with AFFTA, and what I'm trying to do more and more is not necessarily post a ton to just for the sake of staying, in front of people. What I'm trying to do is to give the best information possible when we get it. When something is important and I need our retailers or manufacturers or our guides, to hear it, then that's when I'm really focused on putting things out. When it's, not that everything, not that I was putting out irrelevant or we were putting out irrelevant before, but rather than, like Sadler has always said, we don't have to be the first with news. We have to be the best.
Exactly.
So I've really taken that to heart. And, but by the same token, even when I put stuff out like that, it's still getting folks to read that's a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm.
I can communicate till the cows come home, but if people are, if they don't read, or they don't engage with it, then, there's only so much that you can do.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can go and, say 5, 10, 15 times, they're going to be just as, they're going to tune out just as quickly. You'll wind up losing more, or another facet of the audience.
Exactly. It's interesting. It's a good question because, and so you're the person. I mean, you do all the social media. You're on that. That's part of your job.
You got it.
Yeah. And I mean, you made a couple good points there. One is, actually next week on my other podcast, we have an Instagram expert coming on, and she talks about how, just like you said, you don't have to post every day. In fact, it makes it worse, right? Because when you're posting every day, if it's not, it's diluting the content, right? You'd rather, and she actually only posts once a month. Not to say that's exactly the right way, but I think you got to figure out what's right for you, right? And so those are all good questions. And I think the other thing on that is that, how do you get the word out there? I mean, I think some people try to, be on YouTube and kind of be everywhere, right? And that's also a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to, I wrote a blog. I started a blog in 2009, and it since has now gone the way of the buffalo, but I would try to be on every possible channel just to get people to come and read and stuff like that. But even back then, what I always tried to focus on was managing expectations. And even from an advertising standpoint, in marketing, clients I've always had them. They're saying, "Oh, I want to be in front of people."
Yeah.
I want to be in front of people. I gotta, let's have a blog post or a social media post. I want to be on every day or twice a week, whatever. And I try to tell them, I said, "Oh, it's fantastic. And I think it's a great idea." I said, "But where's your content coming from? What are you going to say 2-3 times?
Exactly.
What sort of resource are you going to be? What's going to make you
stand out?
Interesting. People are going to continue to, listen." So
that's
great
advice. That's great advice. And that's why I'm excited to share some of the stuff I have coming, because I think that's, you're right on. That's a great point. You don't want to, dilute your stuff. So cool, Matt. Well, I think, we've covered a few of the topics I wanted to hit on. There's a few things we probably won't get to here. I guess one thing before I forget about it, if people did want to join AFFTA, where would you send them? They can just go to AFFTA.org. Again, we're a trade organization. So if you are a guide, retailer, manufacturer, if you make your living or make a substantial part of your living in the fly fishing industry, then absolutely you can join us. And is it $35 a year
for guides?
Yeah,
for guides. And then there's different categories and different dues for other folks as well. So
can you just run through that real quick? What are the other folks and what are the other categories?
I wish I could. I'd put everybody to sleep. There's a bunch. Yeah. So manufacturers, there's a bunch of different tiers based on the size of your business. Same with outfitters and lodges. Same with travel companies.
What if you were a travel company and what would they want to go for?
Oh boy.
Or, or
It sort of depends on revenue.
oh, okay.
That's what the different levels are.
Gotcha.
It's
Depends on
not
revenue.
different levels based on benefits. It's based on your revenue.
That makes sense. That makes
So,
sense. Okay, cool. I just want to touch on that. So, and what is your home water that you fish there, and what species are you targeting?
well, the beautiful thing about New York, in Western New York, I live in the Finger Lakes region. So we've got a lot of lakes. We've got a lot of rivers, the Lake Ontario or Great Lakes tributaries. We've got a lot of those. So our diversity is pretty amazing. I mean, everything from, you sight fish for carp. There's muskie, pike,
Hmm.
large and smallmouth bass. We get all the lake run browns, steelhead, salmon.
All right.
Yeah, the smallmouth fishery in the Lake Ontario tributaries is pretty special as well. Um, but yeah, there's and then the lakes have got our rainbows, browns, lake trout, regular lakers.
Wow, you got it all. So what do you? So if you can only pick one species for the rest of the time, what are you going for?
Oh man. uh, you know what? I'm gonna have to go with the fish that I grew up chasing, and that would be largemouth bass topwater.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's yeah, that I'll just keep it simple. There's a lot of
exactly.
other scenarios that I love, but largemouth bass with topwater is fantastic.
That's cool. That's cool. And so we talked a little bit, on the COVID thing. Where would you direct a company if they wanted to dig more into, any other resources to help them, learn about, maybe how they can help their company?
Sure. We actually created a resource page on our site. So again, if you go to AFFTA.org, it should be AFFTA.org/COVID resources. There is a link in our navigation on the homepage as well that says COVID resources. So folks can go there, and we're updating as much as we learn new items. We're putting them up there from the federal level, and then also the state level to as much as we can. So.
Okay, perfect. And so anything, what are you expecting in the next 6 to 12 months? Anything new? I mean, how do you think this is all? If you had to make a guesstimate in 6 months, how are we going to be looking here?
You know what? I'd like to think that we'll sort of be coming out of the fog. I think, I feel as though we will, but I think we're going to be in a rebuilding stage by then, and I think it's all going to be predicated on how seriously people take that recovery, right? It's going to be based on, yes, the rules are going to be relaxed a little bit and things like that, but you still have to take the steps and the measures seriously. Otherwise, we're just going to be right back, in the same place we were before.
Exactly. Have you talked to companies that have gone, out of business, bankrupt because of this already, or at that point?
I haven't necessarily. I've talked to a couple of retailers who have said that they know that they're not going to make it out the other side of this. And I've talked to, there's a lot of fly shops and folks that they just have had to close their doors, but there's a lot of folks that they're turning to their online sales. They're adjusting to doing video content, having live tying nights, different things along that line. And then, again, there's fly shops that, their online sales might have been 5% of their revenue, and now it's 100% of their revenue.
Yeah.
Only because their store is closed. So I think the other thing we're going to see is just a shift in business, how people handle themselves in business, how they diversify, and how much attention they pay to what may have been a very small source of revenue, how they can better cater to stay in touch with their customers, even on a remote standpoint. So, yeah, and those who don't they're gonna learn, and it's all those those that are serious about it and those that are willing to change are going to be the ones that, they're going to continue to flourish. So,
Yep.
But yeah, and coming out of this, if I could give any advice to anybody out there, it would be make sure you check in with your local shops and guides. If you can book a trip and it's down the road, if you can make sure you buy some stuff online, if you can, just
buy a
just
trip
stay
in advance for somebody.
Yeah. A lot of it is just, honestly, it's letting these folks know that you are thinking about them. That's a big deal too.
Mm-hmm.
We've been calling through our retailer list and our manufacturer list and stuff, and just trying to see how they're doing. What are they seeing on the ground there? How are they holding up in general, even from a human standpoint? A lot of stuff with businesses, it's a lot of the same for everybody across the board, but just asking people how they're doing is, it means a lot to folks to know that there's others that are thinking of them.
Yep.
And that they're not in it alone. So,
yep.
So yeah, that a little bit of humanity and just taking some time to connect, it goes a long way.
Exactly. Cool. Well, I'll leave it at that, and put a link in the show notes at AFFTA, AFFTA.org, and they can people can sign up and support you guys and support the fly fishing industry, right?
You got it.
All right, Matt. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and shedding some light on what we have going. It's obviously unprecedented. We've never been at this place before, so I'm sure we're going to learn a lot. And like you said, I think we'll be in a different place. And it seems like I always try to take the positives out of it, and I think there will be some positives. So we'll look for the silver lining, right, as we go through this.
Exactly.
All right, Matt. Hey, I'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Thank you.
So there you go. A quick reminder about the new podcast, outdoorsonline.co, a marketing podcast that helps you grow your online brand. I'm interviewing some of the biggest internet marketers who are doing it the right way and are teaching some good stuff. So every week I have a new episode coming out on Wednesday. So if you're getting this today, when this comes out on Tuesday, stay tuned tomorrow for the new episode. That's outdoorsonline.co. And would be really great if you could click subscribe and possibly share the show if you get a chance. Hey, just want to say thanks again for stopping by today to check out the show. I'm looking forward to catching up this soon. I hope to maybe see you online or on the river. And definitely on the river. Hopefully COVID is continuing to calm down, and you are on the river right now. And I'm heading out there right now, so I'll see you there.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.